do you feel about the fact that out of all of pop history, all of your peers essentially have voted something that you put together as the best single of all time?
Well, first of all, I was to tears when I heard about it. And I realized it was a great record. I mean, obviously, I can see why people would vote for it, but I never thought in my mind that it would beat some of Phil Spector stuff. It's like I don't see how people could overlook "Be My Baby," for example, as a great record, and vote for a good vibration. But I'll tell you one thing right now. We worked our heads off. No wonder they did. First of all, they could see all the work that went into it. It was like a little pocket symphony, or what I would call a little pop symphony masterpiece. And I think people picked up on that.
Do you think that, all classic singles have a sort of timeless era to them? You mentioned Phil Spector's thing. Do you think that when one hears that song, one can say, that was definitely a 60s song? I mean, what's your take on it when you hear it today?
Fresh as the day I produced it. It's got to be one of the most straight-ahead records I've ever heard. It just goes and goes,
When I've listened to the many parts of it that have come out in terms of like edits and that sort of thing. Did you, from day one, hear the finished version in your head, and then your job was to essentially assemble it from what you had recorded?
No, I don't work that way. I work verse to chorus, bridge separately. Well, Good Vibrations was like a sort of a do-ron-ron, diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly, that kind of beat, the jingle, the triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that, and the cello on Good Vibrations was same as that, the do-ron-ron kind of feel, but a lot more watered down, you know what I mean, not quite as expansive, The idea of Good Vibrations is very spiritual, of course, because it's like showing people that the feelings, some feelings are deeper than just feelings, they're vibrations, you know what I mean?
If it were possible for you to gauge what you think is the best possible candidate for your own best single of all time, would that be the track?
If I were voting, I would have voted for Good Vibrations myself, because, of course, I'm not being egotistical about it, but it was a great record. It really was.
When you are making records now, like the record you're just in the middle of doing,
right?
Is it a case of wanting to achieve what you achieved then, or is it a case of moving on?
Well, I think, like I said, the boys and I agree that Good Vibration was our greatest record, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. You know what I mean? That's the one that'll always sound good.
Is it the sort of song that if you need to, you can sit down at the piano and perform these days? Is it something that takes a lot out of you to do?
It does, yeah, it actually does. I don't usually play my stuff. I don't wallow in the mire too much, but I love the stuff we write, though.
If you had to vote for the best single of all time, and it wasn't a Brian Wilson or Beach Boys song, what do you think?
Probably You've Lost That Love and Feeling by the Righteous Brothers, yeah.
It's very rare that, aside from occasional Grammy or BMI or ASCAP awards, there's very few occasions when artists vote for other artists' work. Do you really feel that being the person who's responsible for recording the greatest single of all time, is that kind of like...
Well, it pumps me up a little bit, I must admit. I feel pumped up as hell. I really do. And I know it's not a hype, too, in a rig. I know that Mojo wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I know nobody would actually hype up, rig up a hype #1. I really do trust and believe that Mojo was telling the truth.
Absolutely the case. The very last thing, I was just touching on something that was mentioned about the spiritual aspect of Good Vibrations. I wasn't fully aware that, I guess initially Tony Asher had tried some lyrics, and then Mike, I guess, came by with some other ones. How did you decide what was the great lyrical accompaniment to what you wanted to say musically? I mean, how did you kind of come by these words as opposed to those?
Tony's? Well, because Mike was more down to the business on musical sense. And Tony wasn't really as down to business. I mean, I don't think. Tony's a great lyricist, but Mike is good.
Our guest today, I'm delighted to remind you, is Brian Wilson. Welcome back, Brian.
Hi.
A lot of people in those early days of the Capitol Tower trying to get a reputation as a decent studio, in a town where there was a lot of great studios.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people used to complain, other rock and roll acts on the label. I remember Johnny Otis often saying he was not happy with what Capitol could offer as a studio. The separation wasn't good, and even, I think Gene Vincent once said the same thing.
Yeah.
Would you have said that was a reason to stay away and go to other studios?
Yeah, it was. I went back and forth between Western and Gold Star, you know. We had a list of studios that we liked, although to actually tell a story about how Good Vibrations came to exist as a record, what I had to do to get that to happen, I went to 5 studios, cut 5 different sections of it. The record itself took 6 weeks, working every day. So we had, at the end of that 6 weeks, we had a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of a record, but it lacks something. It lacks funkiness. It's too smooth or too cut and dried. You know, edit here and this is edited there, and let's put a chorus in here. Let's do a nice drum roll, and then all of a sudden we'll come into a real dry cello and a different kind of drum off of like a big bass drum and a big tambourine and a tambourine and a big tom-tom sound and a big snare sound. And we drop down to a little skimpy little chorus like I'm picking up good vibrations, you know. And I thought while I was making it, I said, oh, we're really into something here. We're into a real project. But then later I said, well, we've made better records than Good Vibrations, you know. But yeah, it took 6 weeks. Yeah, hard work, a lot of hard work.
When you say you would edit at the early stages, would you be editing mixes down to a 1/4 inch, 2-track, or would you do it on 4 or 8-track at that time?
8-track.
You do a multi-track edit?
Yeah, what we did was we recorded on 4-track in one studio and took it over to an 8-track studio and overdubbed the 4 tracks onto a couple tracks of the 8-track. And we kept ping-ponging from studio to studio, and finally we wound up, the production wound up over at RCA Victor. And, no, excuse me, at Columbia, at Columbia Studios. And it's, you know, I just wound up over there. That's when we wound up singing the voices. None of the voices were done anywhere else. The voices were all done at Columbia. The background part of it, the track part of it, was done at Sunset Studio, Gold Star Studio, Western Studio, RCA Victor Studio, and CBS at 5.
Oh.
And the cello was overdubbed at CBS. The na 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 na. Those backgrounds at the end of the song were done at CBS. It was all just, it fractured me when I heard it, though. I was happy with it. I said, you know, you can't get a better record than this. I mean, you know, I sought out to do a good record, and I did, and I made it.
We just heard the classic Good Vibrations, bringing back lots of memories, which are not clouded at all. You recall the studios. You almost mentioned who was on the sessions, and Larry Knechtel playing on the thing, and all kinds of people in there.
Yeah. Most people will call our music Chuck Berry influenced and the Four Freshmen influence. But our real true roots come from Phil Spector. And that's where the Beach Boys left off with the Spectorian production technique with the echo and the proper use of echo, and then, of course, the phenomenon of achieving one sound out of 2, mixing 2 things to become one, you know, making a guitar and a piano sound like a third thing, rather than, hey, I hear that as a guitar and a piano. They say, hey, dig the sound, you know. That's what we learned to do. And not to mention being more critical about bass lines and seeing how much you can say with how little. If you create something very great with just very little, and you know, then you're doing what Phil Spector did and what the Beach Boys do, and so that's the way that was. Our roots go back to Phil Spector, and even farther back. But I mean, it's more of a just rock and roll, you know,
music.
Yeah.
Did Phil ever put his head round the door just to check out what was going on a Beach Boys session at all? I
do believe he did, but I'm not sure when. It's all, you know, as far as in my mind, I'm not real sure about what we used to do, because I'm a person who took a lot of drugs and it ruined my memory. It goofed my memory up. I refuse to remember certain things in my life, and that's one of the things I don't know. You know.
How did that situation come about? Was it a pressure of work thing, or was it the temptation of trying new things out, what, say, the Beatles may have done in England and vice versa?
Oh, you're talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
That's what I was getting at.
Well, Paul McCartney told me on the phone, and also to other people in the business, in the industry that he thought Pet Sounds was one of the greatest albums ever made. So he was paying homage to me. He was paying his respects to our talents as singers and producers, you know. And I was very grateful for that. Of course, I thought that, except for Burt Bacharach, I think Paul McCartney should be considered to be the most prolific songwriter in the last 30 years.
There have been many times when I thought that, yeah. I don't want to do music, but I still squeeze out those songs, you know. I squeeze them out of my throat. I try to squeeze a song, going to the task of doing it.
Well, what made you feel that way, that you didn't want to do it?
Well, it's a long story. I think I had a bad marriage, my first bad marriage. It kind of messed me up a little bit. But I'm okay now, though. All right. My first two babies, I didn't pay attention to them. I didn't raise them. I didn't do nothing. You know, my ex-wife did it all. But this time around, with my second marriage, I'm taking really good care of the babies. I'm watching them. I'm keeping them loved and all that stuff.
So there was never a music lesson for you?
2 months of accordion lessons once when I was a kid. That's all I had. Other than that, I'm self-taught.
You got great ears.
I have one ear.
Okay, you have a great ear.
Thank you.
Now, it's your left ear that's the...
No, my right ear is deaf.
And how long has it been that way?
Since I was born. I was born deaf in my right ear.
Okay.
You know, which is a bummer, but I don't know. Follow me, guys. I go here, and this is where I lay, you know, and I look around. I look at all the beautiful trees and flowers, and I think good thoughts about a lot of peace, and, you know, this is my favorite little spot in nature right here.
So are you more comfortable with who you are now?
Yeah. Very much.
Tell me more about that.
Well, what do you mean who I am? Just comfortable with just being Brian Wilson?
Yes.
It feels pretty good. It feels like it should. I feel like I should.
And how's that?
Proud of myself, proud of my success, proud of the Beach Boys, proud of my solo career.
What melodies that you've written are you proudest of?
Well, I'm most proud of God Only Knows, you know, of the melodies. God Only Knows. It's a very beautiful chord pattern. The melody was a little thing and beautiful. I like that. It's my favorite one.
And that's also a song that Carl sang.
Yeah, he sang that one.
That has to be one of the most recognizable intros in pop music.
I know. You just turn the radio, so it's so out there. You know what I mean? It's such a good sound. You know, it comes on, boom, just like that. You know.
One of the songs that I like on the new album is "Lay Down Burden."
Oh yeah, Lay Down. Of course, I forgot about that. Yeah, I dedicated that to Carl after he died.
I was at the concert that you did outside Chicago in St. Charles, and that was one of the songs that you did live. And I remember sitting in the audience, and there was a backdrop, and there were pictures of Dennis and Carl that came up onto the screen.
Yeah.
And there was one point in this where I thought I was going to lose it. Is it difficult for you to sing that song?
It's a little bit tough, but I mean, after you sort of get used to it, you know, you get used to those kind of things. You know what I mean? Death is just part of life, you know. There's death in life, you know. What can you do?
I know, but there's a point where, I mean, surely, I mean, you have to think that there's enough.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest, I mean, I think there's enough for your family.
Yes.
That it's like time out. Hold on, something's wrong here.
You know. I know what you mean. I don't even know what to think myself, how to talk to anybody about it. I think what's going to happen is we're going to just hold on to it as long as we can, then we're going to have to just deal with it, you know.
Deal with what?
Deal with his death. Deal with the fact that he's not a Beach Boy anymore. We lost him. It was inspired by my wife and my daughters. Well, my firstborn anyway. I went to the piano day after day. I was happy. They were loving me, and I was loving them. It made me want to go to the piano and just write good, beautiful songs, you know. Hello there. This is the Wilson family.
I remember watching a documentary, and there was something with your mom, and she said that you were a people pleaser, that you make everybody happy, and you end up keeping your own feelings smothered and buried.
Right.
Is that true?
That's true, yeah.